Good evening. A former senior investigator at the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, has told Newsnight how she resigned after making a formal complaint alleging an investigation she was overseeing into the troubled Metropolitan Police Force was subject to what she saw as political interference, and that the assessment she made of officer conduct was watered down. Tricia Napier was a lead investigator at the IOPC, tasked with overseeing the system for complaints made against the police in England and Wales. In the most serious cases, it conducts its own investigations into allegations of misconduct. And Ms Napier was tasked with reviewing the conduct of the officers involved in the stop and search of Bianca Williams and her partner Ricardo dos Santos, two black athletes who said they'd been racially profiled when they were stopped in their car in the summer of 2020. She quit as lead investigator over the handling of the case, and tonight she speaks exclusively to Newsnight, revealing details of her dispute with the watchdog. The Independent Office for Police Conduct denies any wrongdoing. Here's Seema's report.
Confidence in the police has fallen to an all-time low following a series of scandals involving the Metropolitan Police as well as other forces in England and Wales. Misogyny, racism, serial rapists, bungled investigations. There's been a lot for the police watchdog, the IOPC, to investigate. But what if their conduct is called into question? In 2020, Olympic athletes Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos were stopped by police in West London on the grounds that he was driving erratically.
And the footage there shows officers, again, shouting at the driver's door, telling Ricardo dos Santos to get out. Bianca is pulled out of the car very roughly, and she is handcuffed also by the side of the road. Both of them are complaining because the baby is in the car, a 3-month-old baby in a baby seat.
Tricia Napier, a lead investigator at the Independent Office for Police Conduct, was tasked with looking into this case and assessing whether the MetPolice officers had done anything wrong.
The footage I saw, again, it's called clear tone footage, which is from the police van. And there you can see what is being followed. And you can see that Ricardo dos Santos was driving the car in a perfectly normal manner.
Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos were searched for weapons and drugs. Nothing was found. They believe they were stopped because they're black. Tricia Napier says their skin colour was clear in the footage she saw. The IOPC said it could not comment on the evidence before upcoming disciplinary proceedings. The Met referred itself to the police watchdog after footage of the stop went viral on social media. Forces refer only the most serious cases to the IOPC. Newsnight can now reveal that Tricia Napier resigned from the IOPC after raising concerns about how the investigation was handled.
Why did you resign?
Because I felt I could no longer trust the organisation. The integrity of the organisation, in my view, was completely diminished, and I could just no longer, in all faith, work for them anymore.
Tricia Napier's career at the watchdog spanned 17 years, the last 4 as a lead investigator. She'd been recognised for her tenacious approach to seeking truth.
Tricia Napier had investigated difficult cases before, cases where people had died following police contact and where there were allegations of racism. She had asked to investigate this case because she believed she could do a good job, and she insists she had no preconceptions.
Tricia Napier had seen further footage of the incident and was struck by public comments made by senior Met figures like Commissioner Cressida Dick, defending those involved.
Any officer worth their salt would have stopped that car that was being driven in that manner.
Bianca Williams complained about this. Tricia Napier decided these comments, as well as those made by Deputy Commissioner Stephen Howes, should form part of her investigation. She claims after the scope of her investigation was sent to the Met, as is normal practice, the then Director General of the IOPC, Michael Lockwood, asked to see the footage and other documents.
It was extremely unusual, unprecedented in my experience. The evidence was there for me as lead investigator to review and to make decisions on.
And that didn't sit well with you?
It didn't sit well with me at all. And my assumption was then, and still is, that somebody from the Met had bounced a message after the terms of reference had hit. You know, that's a hypothesis of which I have no evidence.
The Met told Newsnight it was not aware of any conversations taking place between the force and Michael Lockwood, while the IOPC said it was not unusual or unique to this case, that the Director General would review evidence himself, and strongly denied that decisions were influenced by anything other than the evidence during this investigation.
Tricia Napier claims what she calls interference continued, with Michael Lockwood appointing the Regional Director for London, Sal Nassim, to oversee the investigation. As lead investigator, she had decided there were grounds to investigate several of the officers for potential gross misconduct. Sal Nassim then downgraded her assessment. From the documentation we've seen, it's unclear why that happened.
In other words, what the investigation was going to be based on was watered down. We had determined that there was an indication, it only has to be an indication, that there was a breach in standards for honesty and integrity. We had a meeting on the 2nd of September by Skype in which Sal Nassim said no, he disagreed. And instead of going along with what I'd said, which was this was potentially gross misconduct, he said no, misconduct only.
Michael Lockwood says that he played no part in the downgrading of the assessments and did not appoint Sal Nassim. The public comments made by Cressida Dick were not investigated by the IOPC, as Tricia Napier says she requested. The Watchdog told us there was no indication that the Commissioner may have behaved in a manner which would justify the bringing of disciplinary proceedings, but suggested to the London Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime that they reflect with her on the actions. Tricia Napier removed herself from the investigation and raised a formal complaint. Several colleagues supported Tricia Napier's judgment on the officer's conduct and the strangeness of the situation, and it is accepted by the IOPC that Sal Nassim took over the decision-making because the case would attract a high degree of scrutiny. But an internal investigation into Tricia Napier's complaint of outside interference concluded there was no evidence to support her allegations, that even though it might be unusual to change a lead investigator's decisions, it is allowed in the IOPC rules.
Are you not a disgruntled member of staff?
No, I'm not. I mean, it's about doing the right thing. And since then, my decision has been vindicated because they changed it. So it's not me being disgruntled, it's me being incredibly disappointed in the organisation not living up to its values.
These serious allegations come as the police watchdog faces another crisis. Its director, Michael Lockwood, resigned last month amid a police inquiry into a historical allegation of a sexual nature. An IOPC spokesperson said it was not unusual or unique that assessments of police officer conduct change as the evidence develops, and that given the significant community concerns and public confidence issues raised by this case, Mr Nassim, who as regional director is our most senior decision maker in London, as well as our organisational lead on discrimination, chose to become the decision maker. Tricia Napier is now bringing an employment case against her former employer, in which she repeats the claim the Williams case was subject to political pressure. It is being contested by the IOPC. Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos did not wish to comment on our investigation. The couple continue to wait for an outcome of the investigation that began 2.5 years ago. We rely on bodies like the IOPC to hold powerful organisations to account. But with police forces marred in controversy and scandal, the last thing needed is for the actions and credibility of its own watchdog to be called into question.
And Seema is here now. Seema, what more can you tell us tonight about this?
Well, let's be clear, Kirsty. From speaking to people who understand the IOPC and how it works, they're adamant that it's done nothing improper here, that for the Director General to request to see footage of an important case is something that does happen and should happen, because ultimately all decisions taken by the Watchdog are in the DG's name. We've spoken to people who know the workings of the organisation and agree this kind of behaviour is not unprecedented. So why is this a story, you might be asking? Well, what is incredibly unusual here is that we have a woman, a senior investigator, who was so upset in the way a case was handled that she quit her job and made a formal complaint. None of her complaints were upheld, but she's now taking the IOPC to court for an employment case, which it is contesting. In that, she's referring back to her allegations that this high-profile case was subject to political pressure. And I must emphasise a claim we should stress that we haven't seen any evidence to support. I think what she's also doing, Kirsty, is raising questions as to why it's taken so long to conclude a case that's been going on since 2020. I mean, remember, this happened to Bianca Williams and her partner in July of that year. And we're still none the wiser as to what exactly happened and what consequences, if any, some of the officers might face if they are found to have behaved improperly.
Seema, thanks very much indeed.